did the math. If you take all of the murder that happens in this country and just gear it towards billionaires, it'll only take 2 weeks to kill all of them. Yeah. That might not be a punchline, but that's not a lot of time, right? What, 2 weeks? That's Also, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not advocating for more violence. I'm advocating for the exact same amount of violence we already have and just redirecting the target.
We, of course, do not endorse any of those messages.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And hello and welcome to Colonial Outcasts, the anti-imperialist podcast that real estate developers would never willingly listen to. We are your hosts, Greg Stoker and Mark Wayne, coming to you with a completely ad hoc and improvised episode because, I don't know, if you possess a soul, which we actually might, things are challenging right now. So how we doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Been a rough couple weeks, like emotionally, but you know, we're gonna keep on keeping on, I guess. And one of the big problems is humans have a tendency to believe that in any given moment, they are occupying the most consequential moment in history. This is our most important election yet, so just gift $5 to the Democratic Party to save democracy. Without spelunking into the depthless cavern.
It's a hard word, bro. It's okay.
Oh, depthless chasm of temporal philosophy. I think we can all agree that things really aren't chill right now. This morning, for instance, the official account of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, posted this banger of a recruiting poster. Oh, here it is. Okay. Yes, White House and ICE.gov collabed on a social media post that has Trump saluting. It says, defend the homeland. Join ICE today. This is like Uncle Sam wants you 2.0, but for the war to be waged on our own people.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we are building concentration camps on the homeland. So depending on your definition of defending the homeland, you know, like you said, we're turning the war inward.
Yeah.
And with a budget of what is it, $160 billion now?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is what I wrote in my notes right here. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah. So basically what I wanted to say is like, look, y'all, the empire or the engine of our dying empire requires another forever war. And we no longer possess the power projection to do it abroad in places like Iran. So it will be waged in the homeland. The machine must be fed in the imperial core itself, in the continental United States. Now, it's a race to see, really, if the material conditions of the average working class American degrade fast enough for a popular revolution before, like, the techno-feudalists over at Palantir integrate mass drone warfare in Ukraine into your local police department, right? And it's clear we're entering, really, a time of great upheaval, the rise of fascism in the collapsing West, the challenge of the global South to American unipolar hegemonic power, the onset of mass climate disruption, and the unraveling of narratives and capitalist propaganda that is meant to keep you in line. That last piece is what this freeform episode is about. You know, we're going to totally market this one as organic because there's too much going on, bearing witness to the unfolding catastrophe in Gaza. And I've been too depressed over the past week to write substantive show notes. But it's as the good Captain John Brown once wrote, I cannot remember a night so dark as to have hindered the coming day, nor a storm so furious and dreadful as to prevent the return of warm sunshine and a cloudless sky. So we're going to keep on keeping on because we are all in, and I mean this globally, an existential fight for survival. And today we're going to be talking about propaganda and the information war for our own existence. So we are probably in the theoretical fifth generation of warfare. And to define terms, first gen warfare refers to a historical mode of warfare characterized by the use of massed manpower and linear tactics like line and column formations, primarily using smoothbore muskets, you know, prevalent from the 17th to mid 19th century. And bear with me, y'all, I've got to set this up in order to land it. Second gen warfare emerging after the Industrial Revolution is characterized by the increased use of technology and firepower, moving away from close order formations of the first generation. It involves tactics of fire and movement, where troops disperse laterally to take advantage of cover and concealment while using indirect fire, like massed artillery. Third-gen warfare, also known as maneuver warfare, is a military strategy that emphasizes speed, agility, bypassing enemy lines to collapse their forces from the rear. It contrasts with traditional attrition warfare, where forces directly engage and attempt to destroy each other. Fourth-gen warfare, which is, as a veteran, that was kind of where I was in 2010, 2013. Describes a type of conflict where nation states are no longer the sole or primary actors, and warfare involves a blurring of the lines between military and non-military actions, combatants and civilians, and even war and politics. It is characterized by the rise of non-state actors, the use of asymmetrical tactics, and a focus on undermining an adversary's political will and societal cohesion rather than solely targeting their military. Insurgencies, counterinsurgencies, and insurgencies during the global war on terror, where you have a state actor fighting a non-state actor. And here's where we are, and this is what you're involved in. 5G warfare, also known as fifth generation warfare, is a concept describing a new form of conflict that leverages technology and information manipulation to influence populations and achieve strategic goals, without direct physical confrontation. It moves beyond traditional warfare by focusing on, quote, the human domain, targeting individuals' perceptions, behaviors, and loyalties. And it follows from fourth gen warfare and the advent of non-state actors. Everyone listening to this podcast and engaged with these issues forms a sort of asymmetrical body politic on the front lines of the fifth generation information war. So welcome to the conflict, folks. Come on in. The water's great. And that's what we're here to talk about: propaganda and the existential information war for our own survival. The transnational ruling class wants you as docile wage slaves as they fulfill their fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders to boil the seas and black out the sun. So where do we begin, man? It's Wednesday, July 30th. And did you see that Blackstone real estate developer exec may have been Luigi'd?
Yeah. What do you think about it?
Well, you're generally the show's
guy.
Yeah, you're the show's conspiracy guy, but I think we might be flipping a little bit.
We're flipping.
Yeah, well, it's just because CBS News broke this article, broke the story, and it's literally the most bizarre piece of journalism I've seen. Do you care to take a stroll?
Let's take a
with
stroll.
Me?
Hold my hand to this romantic park.
All right, so this was updated today, but it was first broke, obviously, Tuesday. Gunman in New York City office shooting tried to target NFL headquarters. Mayor Eric Adams says. Okay, so the whole NFL story, uncorroborated by any hard evidence, is coming from Mayor Eric Adams and the NYPD. Just as a primer, okay? Now, let's look at this. Hang on, okay. So the shooter behind a deadly rampage inside an office building in Midtown Manhattan on Monday evening was apparently targeting NFL offices there, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said Tuesday morning. Law enforcement sources say investigators recovered a 3-page rambling note from gunman Shane Tamura's wallet. Okay, so here you see in the article, there is a link for that under 3-page rambling note. One question is, who can stuff 3 pages of a manifesto into a wallet? Also, where is the manifesto? In which he referenced brain disease. And if you click any of these CBS News links, they don't take you to the note or anything regarding it. They take you in a loop that brings you right back to this article. According to the sources, the note said he wanted to have his brain donated to science so it could be studied for disease. Quote, he did have a note on him. The note alluded to that he felt he had CTE, a known brain injury for those who participate in contact sports. He appeared to have blamed the NFL for his injury, Adams said on CBS Mornings. So here's the thing. He was 27 years old from Las Vegas, He drove cross country to New York, and he targeted a 44-story building on 345 Park Ave, which is home to the offices for the NFL, as well as Blackstone and other development companies. And apparently, he took the wrong elevator up to the NFL headquarters, which was on a completely different floor than the 30th, the floor that he got off on. And amongst all the confusion, a Blackstone exec buys it, as well as a intern at Rudin Management, which is another real estate development company, and 2 security guards. One who was an off-duty cop using a service that allows corporations to hire off-duty cops to supplement their security, and that's what we're looking at right now. And of course, the shooter himself, committed suicide during the act. And I was made aware of one thing when it comes to like Blackstone, as we know that it is a major real estate development corporation in the United States.
Yeah, in a nutshell, it is the reason why you cannot afford a home, because during COVID they bought up, I believe, 40% of family residences or family homes, basically, and they did it under a lot of subsidiaries, like different LLCs, things like that, to kind of mask who was buying them all up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I believe, that one of the key strategies in masking why we were suffering in this, housing crisis. You had immigration thrown out there. We had a lot of undocumented immigrants who were buying up all the homes. That was one of the ways of, throwing off the scent of the public. But yeah, it was Blackstone. Blackstone is the reason why you can't afford a home.
Yeah, and also someone brought to my attention and messaged me when I was posting about this. He was Hawaiian. Many Hawaiians can no longer afford to live in Hawaii because they've been priced out of the market. Many of those folks live in Vegas, where he lived. Blackstone owns a lot of property in Hawaii. Okay, first of all, that's true throughout the country, though. So I don't really know how much relevance that has based off his like an ethnicity. Yeah. But no, that's true. But like the media blitz to make sure this isn't another Luigi is crazy.
So your take is, you're saying that it was a Luigi and they're trying to throw off the narrative as it being something more benign, like he suffered from CTE, and less intentional.
I'm saying the entire story and how it's being reported and how it's being managed by the media is absolutely bizarre. It's absolutely
right. So, but you're implying that might be the take, is that they don't want this. They don't want a lot of copycats on this. So they're saying that he went there to take out some NFL executives, and he wound up accidentally taking out the executive of the company that is responsible for.
Basically a lesser subsidiary management fund for Blackstone. And here's interesting. Again, what's so bizarre about it is we don't see any documents. We don't see the manifesto. The only thing they show us is his concealed firearms permit. Like if he had 3 pages, rolled 3 pages of a rambling manifesto in his wallet, it's been a few days. Where is it?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, okay. So I buy that. I'm bought into that. What's your opinion? I thought you had a different opinion on it. I thought you were putting out that it might've been like a psyop to frame, radical leftists as being would-be assassins, so therefore to justify a crackdown.
Yeah, no, I mean there's no politics behind this, motivated behind the shooting that we know of, because all the only sources we have are Eric Adams, his office, and coming from the NYPD police commissioner Jessica Tisch, the heiress of the Lowe's fortune, who remember he targeted Comrade Workwear, Comrade James, after he made those CEO billing cards. Yeah, she's the one who debanked him. She's the NYPD commissioner, and she 3 weeks ago let off an officer who killed an unarmed man at a traffic stop. So it's basically signaling they're circling the wagons and protecting their own interests. They're letting off cops, and they're doing everything they can to make sure, whether or not he was going for the NFL headquarters or not, they don't want another like Luigi frenzy happening.
And they have to also make the executives feel comfortable and safe. So because this has a psychological effect on the ruling class.
Yeah.
you got thousands of executives who are now probably feeling, am I going to be targeted next? So the NYPD's job is to say, hey, ruling class. This is why aren't they like the most heavily funded PD in the United States? Correct.
Yeah. More than most militaries.
Yeah. So obviously we know why, because, New York City contains most of the ruling class who control the world. So you have to invest in their. So essentially the NYPD is their security force. It is the security force for the ruling class as it trickles down to the rest of the economy from New York City. Because we know that Americans are going to start directing their ire at the people who are responsible for the economic despair of Americans. So I see what you're saying. I didn't know that was your take. And I can concur with that.
Yeah. But just look at these fucking headlines from Wall Street Journal. One of Blackstone's highest ranking women killed in shooting. Blackstone exec Wesley LePatner was a rising star and mentor to women. One of Blackstone's highest women. Yeah. Gunman was targeting office. Yeah. So, just look at how the neoliberal media is reporting that, and it's always a clue to what they're thinking. And again, the Wall Street Journal, it's access journalism. They serve the purposes of like big money Wall Street, the professional managerial class, in order to get access to them and their inside stories. So this is nothing new. I just wanted to point that out, that it was an absolutely bizarre how this story has been approached and reported on.
Yeah. I've been a little bit out of tune with the story. I just glanced at it and I saw the article by CNN saying the exact same thing, that he was suffering CT, or the going thing is he was claiming he suffered from CTE and went to go target NFL executives. But then I heard that he was never in the NFL.
No, he was no. The story is he blamed the NFL. He only played high school ball.
Oh, got it.
And he blamed the NFL because apparently the NFL, which is true, covers up like injury reports and how damaging it is for, professional athletes after they get out. It like dominates the rest of their lives, which CTE actually does.
Right.
And again, it's plausible, but also it's entirely bizarre as well. Just release the friggin' manifesto. You've been sitting on it 3 days, dude. If it actually exists, 3 pages in a wallet. Just release it. I mean, you released this concealed carry permit.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I'm just saying this whole thing is being completely managed in a way that's bizarre. The audience in the comments section, you can let us know what you think. We will absolutely read it. I just had to point that out because this is not the only narrative that's collapsing and unraveling. Like, do we need to talk about the Epstein case?
Yeah, we need to. We need to talk about it a lot because I think that is the catalyst potentially for class solidarity if we can kind of put down our gatekeeping, our purity politics a little bit. I've been harping on this for a while, and that's what I really want to get into.
Yeah. Okay. So we can talk about like the most recent development. I mean, all you guys who listen are super media savvy and you keep up with everything that's going on. But I don't know if you missed this. So they're basically trying to control and manage the narrative around Epstein, obviously, because it's a huge PR blunder that both the Republicans are handling in the worst way possible, but also somehow the establishment Dems are not able to get their shit together to actually capitalize on it, which is a different conversation. But yesterday on Air Force One, when asked why he broke off his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, Trump said this. This is insane.
Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. Just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young.
Yeah.
What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, it's people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told them, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want them taking people. and he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again, and I said, out of here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw that on Breaking Points yesterday. How that's the reason that's the reason why he had a breakup with Epstein.
Poaching underage girls from his spa.
That was the inappropriate thing that Epstein did. The main
straw
thing.
that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. So let's start talking about how, I guess, MAGA is handling this. Like you and I, we have somewhat of a disagreement.
No. And just for the audience, our disagreement is essentially, I don't really think it's going to shake MAGA that much.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we both agree that his cultists will do whatever he wants. He bragged during his first primary election that he could shoot someone in Midtown Manhattan and they'd still vote for him, which is true. And apparently he could be a pedo too, and they'd still vote for him. But I think our disagreement is on the extent to which this is actually going to fracture MAGA, just for the audience.
Yeah. So what gives you that impression that it won't fracture MAGA? And I think I know why. And I think this has to do with the difference of what you and I consider a bellwether.
Right. And I'll admit that a lot of my interactions is by monitoring MAGA propaganda, like Charlie Kirk, Gunther Eagleman, Libs of TikTok, all these influencers which were brought into the White House that have a huge following. They were brought in the White House, given the Epstein documents, the first release files, had the photo op. And then now they're like, you know what? Epstein doesn't matter. Like, who's still talking about Epstein? So I think that the entire movement will move on, just like, just when he said during the first election, when he was like, sometimes, you're rich and you just grab them by the pussy. Like, they're like, oh no, that's, I have daughters,
right?
But that's boys talk. That's locker room talk. I feel feelings aren't facts, that it's really not going to move the needle that much.
I do. And, and again, this is all about perception. You are like, cultivating that opinion based on what these public figures in MAGA are doing.
Okay.
Which I think is a terrible bellwether, because these public figures are paid to do that.
Right.
It's not even their own opinion. Like Charlie Kirk, he's just a paid shill for the Republican establishment. That's all he is. He is their boy. He's their mascot. He's the guy that they're hoping will be the bridge to Gen Z, millennials, to try and, pull them into the conservative world and justify it. That's what Charlie Kirk is. He's one big giant poster boy. That's it. He's not a real person, in other words, any more than, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is the voice of Wall Street. That's his job. His job is to convince Americans that the interests of Wall Street are their interests. That's what his job is. He's not a real person in that sense. So
yeah, just remember when he got ratioed trying to defend Brian Thompson after he got X'd out.
Yeah, see, Ben Shapiro, he's out. He is totally out. Nobody trusts him. You just go in his comment section, and they're full of conservatives just saying, "Dude, you're owned by Israel." And of course, you got a lot of like anti-Jew comments in his comment section coming from like racist conservatives. But either way, the point is, Ben Shapiro's out, so they need to bring a new guy in. Charlie Kirk is that guy. Tim Pool, he's out as well. Conservatives don't trust him either because he's just shilling for Israel. He's out. Charlie Kirk is a new dude, and Charlie Kirk is also getting out. So now that we've established where you and I differ on where we get our bellwether, or what we see as the proper bellwether, my bellwether is talking to actual people on the ground. Not like famous people, not influencers, but like literally working class dudes in my neighborhood. And I had an amazing time 2 weeks ago. The main contention I've been having with the audience in the comment section is I get this negative comment. You can't reach MAGA. They're all a bunch of racist Nazis, fascists. You'll never reach them. And I will never entertain them.
And for the record, we know that's not true. Our good friend and friend of the show, former U.S. Army Captain Josephine Gilbo, used to be MAGA, and now she's pretty hardcore on the front lines.
Literally the most radical person in the movement when it comes to reaching out to the other side. Yeah, Josephine and Josephine's tactics, regardless how you feel about it, actually moves the fucking needle. Damn,
That's
I
true.
told myself I'm not going to use bad language on this because I want my dad to see this episode. So, Dad, this episode I want you to watch, and you're going to be watching this. So,
Yeah, and for the record, just to be crystal clear about this, I think people in MAGA world are absolutely reachable. We know we've both done it. I mean, you do more of it than I do, but I know for a fact that that's a lie. Again, our contention is the movement itself as an ideology fragmenting and collapsing in on itself. That's my thing.
So, the perception you will see on TV, it will move on. That will be the perception you'll see on social media. And that is not indicative of what's happening on the ground. I talked to MAGA 2 weeks ago. I had a MAGA weekend. I went to a demolition derby. It was great. I love demolition derbies. I think that's like the true sport. And I hung out with a few dudes. They're like evangelical MAGA rednecks, working class dudes. They own like, like a turf business, here locally. Anyways, I loved what I heard. I loved the conversations I heard. This dude, one of them, hardcore redneck. He goes, dude, Trump is turning on us, man. Man, he's part of it. He's part of it. He's part of everything, dude. I'm done with this. I'm tired of being lied to. I saw a lot of griping going on, and I was like, dude, I love this. I love what I'm hearing. So I, of course, stepped in and was like, hey, you guys want to learn more about what's going on? They're like, yeah. And this all started, by the way, a year ago. A year ago, I was playing baseball with my son in the park here, and another white dude came up with his kids. Redneck dude. I can tell that he's been through a lot. Kind of like had that vibe where he used to struggle with alcohol and drugs, and he's getting his life back together, type of thing. And he was a nice guy. We started talking, and I could also tell that he was brainwashed by a local, very toxic evangelical church just down the road at the corner. And I knew about that church. And we were talking about the state of affairs in the United States. He's like, yeah, things in the United States are going downhill, and that's why we need to support Israel. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, dude, hold on, let me tell you something. And I told him my whole backstory about how I used to be a Zionist, how I went to Israel, and then I became pro-Palestinian because I realized that the Israelis are fucking Nazis. And I said, dude, Israel is a satanic nation. They're massacring kids right now. And in fact, the Palestinians are actually genetically the true Hebrews. So if we're going to go biblically, there's that. And he's like, no way. He didn't get hostile with me. He didn't pull a liberal move and was like, yeah, but no, this guy went, really? And I said, yeah, bro. I lost contact with him. I forgot his number and I couldn't find it on my phone for like a year. I finally found his phone number. I called him up and I said, dude, how you doing? And he said, bro, remember that last conversation we had? I'm like, yeah, dude, I started doing my own research. You're right, bro. Israel's an evil nation. What they're doing to the Palestinians. I'm like, whoa, I'm proud of you, dude. 5-minute conversation and you went down your own rabbit hole in your own research. Hey, you want to go on camera and talk about it? He said, yeah. So I got to hang out with him and his friend. And I saw the hope there, dude. Their MAGA contains so many potential radicals.
Well, and the reason I absolutely concur with you is because they, unlike the DNC bootlickers and the radical and the progressive liberals, they voted for Trump because they're like, fuck this system, something's wrong, I'm getting screwed. And they actually had more class consciousness than any frigging Democratic Party bootlicker has. And that's why.
They're only fed false information. That's it. That's the difference between a right-wing working class demographic and liberals. See, liberals, they're already educated. They're very well aware of what's going on. And they're still like, yeah, but, and it's always that but. If you educate a right-wing conservative American who's like really down in the working class, they will become radical within 5 minutes if you give them the proper information. I've seen it happen with my own 2 eyes, with barely a very small sample size, by the way. So that's what I'm seeing. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have a huge challenge facing us, because we have Charlie Kirk out there
waging 5th gen warfare on us.
And let's talk about that, because I watched Charlie Kirk's what do you call it, discussion he had with 20 Gen Z conservatives. And it's interesting to see the tactics that they're using. And
Okay.
again, remember back when you and I were telling the audience to stop focusing on AIPAC so much because that's literally just a small sliver of what's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
This is why we told you guys that, because they're going to use AIPAC as a sacrificial lamb to still justify support for Israel, or at least excuse Israel for its war crimes against humanity and the genocide. Here we go.
Interesting.
Wow.
Go ahead.
So you're ethnically Jewish.
Ethnically Jewish, yes.
And you have concerns about AIPAC.
Yes, I do.
I'm told that by some people that if I criticize AIPAC, I'm anti-Semitic.
I think it's ridiculous. Yeah. I feel like it's great to have a concern for your country.
Do you think that that AIPAC represents, again, I'm not saying I believe this, but I think this is what you're saying, that it represents a kind of cutting in line of prioritization away from the American people?
Yes.
Would you guys say that's a fair summary? 100%. Meaning that, like, okay, we vote, we're citizens, but a separate group gets higher priority because of whatever reasons. You look like you want to chime in.
That the entirety of the idea of a pack is to represent a group, but the fact that we're allowing a group that doesn't even represent American interests to influence the people who are supposed to be representing us, I have a huge problem with. And that's why I've said this before in a lot.
Okay, so these are fiscal conservatives. Okay, so this is why we said don't focus on AIPAC so much, because guess what? The conservatives the Republican establishment might beat us to it and be like, all right, fine, we'll get rid of AIPAC. All right, okay, AIPAC is gone. While ignoring the fact that the biggest lobby group in the United States, the most powerful one, is of course the real estate companies who will gain the most money in return on investment of the annihilation of Gaza.
Right.
So go ahead.
And I just want to make a point. And it's a bipartisan lobby, just like AIPAC, just like the military-industrial complex. So Trump is a real estate developer. Steve Witkoff, his special Middle East envoy, is another real estate billionaire. Kamala Harris, after her failed election bid, her first public speaking event was as a keynote speaker for the Australian Realtors Conference in May. So both sides of the same coin, all hail not the United States of Israel, but the United States of private property.
Right. So they will sacrifice AIPAC because AIPAC is not that big, and that will be used as a platitude for the American people. Like, okay, fine, we'll let AIPAC go. It doesn't mean we're going to stop supporting Israel. They will reroute money to Israel in some way or another. So the fact that AIPAC has been the center of focus, I see as being very harmful to the movement, because now they'll give you AIPAC and we're still in the same position. People of Palestine are still going to be in the same spot. It's not going to matter. You have to go to the core of the problem, which is the ruling class. It's all of them. So here's the other thing is that, so what Charlie Kirk is doing, it's actually kind of savvy as far as a psyop, because what he's trying to do is shift the focus of Israel to a normalization type of situation where we're going to start going to the liberal route. So liberals, of course, like they show that they're abhorred, that it's tragic what's happening to the Palestinians, but they don't want to go as far as stopping it because that would ruin the goals of the elites. So what Charlie Kirk is doing, he is saying, okay, so I'm going to give you a platitude, conservatives. Would you feel comfortable if Israel was more financially self-reliant while it commits its genocide? Here we go.
That we're basically every year we send about almost $4 billion to Israel. Does that make you upset, or do you understand it given that they're under sort of crisis ongoing?
I would say upset, and the amount since 1948, it amounts to 319 billion adjusted to inflation. And I'd say that I can think of multiple things that we could have spent at home that would have been a better allocation of our taxpayer dollars. And I feel like this money could have been well spent in supporting an economy that would support our generation being able to afford homes rather than military strikes for Israel.
What else? What would you want to see from their government? If their government came out and said, we have a 5-year plan to decouple from U.S. aid, would that help people's view of Israel? If they said, hey, we want to be self-reliant.
Yes, 100%, absolutely.
Do you think that would help?
Yes.
If they're like, thank you for the help since 1948, we're a rich country, we've balanced our budget, We have money in our sovereign wealth fund, which they actually do. Thank you. We're now going to decouple over the next 5 years and basically transition. Do you think that people would think higher of Israel? At least we stop talking about it so much.
Yeah, let's stop talking about it.
Would you put that as a primary?
Yes. Yeah. I would say like that can kind of follow up with a lot of other things, like a lot of other like even European nations. Like I feel like they were kind of.
Okay, so yeah, will you be okay with the genocide, with the ethnic cleansing, with the fact that we just murdered 400,000 babies in the past, 20 months, as long as they can like be financially self-reliant in the next coming years or so? Yeah, we'll be okay with it. See, he's normalizing. This is called a normalization psyop. You normalize what's happening.
And it is a psyop too, because it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Like Israel cannot exist without us. Canada just had to send them 175,000 bullets just for the combat load of 9,900 soldiers because they're low on everything. Back in 1973, when they started bombing the shit out of their neighbors, within the first week, we had to mobilize one of the largest military logistical operations since D-Day to get them the bombs that they need because they ran out. They have no strategic depth. And also their economy is in shambles.
Yeah, it's literally being held up by our taxpayer money. Like businesses are collapsing in Israel. Like they can only afford their healthcare because of our tax money. So let's move on to the next phase of the psyop. So the next phase of the psyop is let's move conservatives who are concerned about what's happening to Palestinians, and let's shift them over to a little liberalism. So Charlie Kirk is trying to shift a conservative audience to liberalism as a way of, getting us to move on from Israel's crimes. Here we go.
Problematic. I mean, there's plenty of things that the Bible says that have been done throughout parts of history that certainly a nation state doing today we would see as a bit of a problem. When it comes to sending these, what you said, $300 billion,
just with the inflation,
to any foreign country, all I can think about is across our own southern border, we have an actual military in the form of the cartel.
Yeah. So also it's shifting the focus towards the homeland, that our problems here at home is mostly undocumented immigrants. That is what is oppressing us right now in this country. It's not the economy. It's not the low wages. It's not our housing crisis. No, it's just undocumented migrants.
Not the real estate lobby.
It's not the police state. It's not the fact that we're opening up concentration camps that will inevitably be for us, normal American citizens. It's the cartels. That's the biggest threat. So and this is also a shift to liberalism, by the way.
That kill thousands of people, and that's leaving out the hundreds of thousands of Americans that have died to drug overdoses due to drugs that have come across our southern border.
No, it's due to drugs that were prescribed by Big Pharma.
And it's insulting that money goes anywhere else because we have such a huge problem here.
Yeah, I want to kind of flip this word association game around just slightly because we haven't done it yet. When I bring up Gaza, Gazans, Hamas, let's just keep Hamas out of it. Gaza and Gaza. What comes to mind?
Complicated.
Complicated.
Destruction.
I'd say differences.
Perish.
What is the impression?
Those were all liberal words, by the way, that the liberals used during Biden's administration, FYI.
That you guys have of what's been happening in Gaza? It doesn't have to be a singular word.
I would say like a severe loss of life. I feel like that's always a bad thing, no matter which way you look at it, no matter who's, basically no matter who's dying, it's never really a good thing.
And you said perish. So would you say that on social media you see a lot of maybe kids dying or death and destruction? Is that getting fed into your algorithms a lot?
Yes, and actually on our school's campus, they'll have these little missing kid posters, and in those posters, they'll read about these kids who have died. They try to have us to have more sympathy for them. And it's like, at the end of the day, as you had mentioned, they are humans. We already have sympathy for them.
So on campus, now let's do something we haven't done. Has there been any awareness for the Israeli hostages?
There you go, hostages.
No.
I think that's also important to talk about, right? I mean,
or the 1,200 plus,
or the 1,200 that were
the 1,200, nearly 1,300. So that's a factor because I think we need to have a balanced conversation about it.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk about balance here. Let's talk about balance. Okay, for one thing, it wasn't 1,300 Israelis that were killed by Palestinians. The number was more like 600, and the IDF killed the rest of them. Balance. Yeah, 400,000 children already dead. The rest of them starving to death right now as we speak.
That's some liberal bullshit right there.
That was liberal. So that is going to be the tactic of the Republican establishment, of the ruling class. Shift the conservatives who are.
It's all coming together, right? You're absolutely correct. And just to drive this point home, let's look at a clip from Breaking Points yesterday, where Crystal Ball wipes the floor with Senator from Michigan, Slotkin, ex-CIA analyst, who's ex-CIA, right?
No such thing.
Yeah. So let's just check this out real quick. Let me pull it up.
A little bit more for blueberries to actually.
Oh, sorry, that's Charlie Kirk talking about child labor, which we can play at the end for our moment of Zen. But hang on one sec. Screen recording. Here we go. Open.
Curious why you condemned Rashida Tlaib for using the rally chant, from the river to the sea, something she said for her evokes equal rights. And you have not condemned Randy Fine, who said that Gazans should, quote, starve away, who floated that the Gaza Strip should be nuked, who called Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Soran as well, called them Muslim terrorists. Where is the concern over him?
I have no problem condemning Randy Fine, who I don't know.
Okay, just so you know, everybody in Washington, because he is such a controversial candidate, knows who the fuck Congressman Randy Fine is. This isn't patent lie. Continuing.
I'm sorry, I don't know who that person is. I have no problem condemning someone who talks like that.
Senator, we have to ask your last question because the your staff is telling us. Do you think AIPAC should register as a foreign lobby?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that I know plenty of people who think they should. I don't.
It's kind of a cop-out answer, don't you think?
Anyways, watch the whole interview. It's crazy. But, we're starting to see a conflation in terms of messaging. I definitely see that. And I see your point, Mark.
Yeah. So they're going to start moving the conservatives to their way of coping with the conservative backlash against the genocide. Due to the work that people like Josephine Gamboa has been doing, they will try to shift them to a liberal route to be like, okay, Israel's probably going a little over the top with this, and they probably need to tone it down. That's going to be the strategy. The question is, will it work? I don't think so, because the thing about like conservatives, especially like working class right wingers, when they get on something, when they get on a crusade, they go hardcore.
That's true.
They go hard, and I'm thinking, like, is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing if you can put them on the right crusade. And sorry about using the word crusade, but the goal here is that if we can put them on a crusade against if you can
put them on the right jihad, rather,
right, the right intifada. And so I had a conversation with the Black Panthers a few weeks ago, and I brought up a point to them that we were brainstorming in a think tank, and I said, one of the things about conservatives that is a plus is that they have very strong paternal and maternal instincts. That seems to be the most potent element of conservatism, is paternal and maternal instincts, which is a good thing. So, given that, the reason why Epstein is such a grand opportunity for us as far as class war is that if we can make the connection that the ruling class is connected with the Epstein thing, which means that they will traffic children no problem, and they probably do even worse. Like what happened on Little St. James is probably PG-13 rated compared to what they actually do. And we have to make the connection that child trafficking is a part of capitalism. It is an arm of capitalism, making money off of children like that.
And it's not just making money too. Like child trafficking, child assault, any sort of any sort of essay is not just about money or whatever. It's also about power
dynamics,
domination. Like capitalism is all at the heart of it is coercion and domination.
It's feeding an insatiable beast, which is greed and power. And if we can make that connection with Epstein, the ruling class, and ICE being the militant arm of the Epstein class, which will eventually, because you think about it.
Is that how you're gonna message it? The Epstein class?
We need to push that term. Call it the Epstein class. Don't we can call it the top capitalist class, the elite class, the ruling class, the oligarchy, but the Epstein class has a certain flavor to it that you just can't get out of your mouth.
I mean, that's true, because I've been hearing a lot of comments like I getting a lot of hate, like, you didn't release it because like Bill Clinton's on it. I was like, bro, I would light Bill Clinton on fire just to watch Pete Hegseth struggle through a morning sober. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not the one with Bill Clinton flags on my truck. But anyways, yes, continue, please.
No, yeah, that's a great. No, you brought up a good point. So this whole thing about, well, like this thing's like, well, if Trump was on the Epstein list, then how come Biden didn't release it? And it's like, here's a thought, maybe because they're both in this together. Imagine that. Imagine the ruling class. Imagine the elites, executive branches of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party being friends behind closed doors. Holy crap. What in the world just happened? So anyways, my point is that we need to target conservative working class Americans with the angle that your top priority is your children and the safety of your children. Well, the people who rule this country, the whole thing, the Democrats, the Republicans, Trump, Biden, Hillary, Obama, they're all part of this monster. Their agenda for this country inevitably will harm your children. And if you want to start protecting them now, then you need to start locking arms with the people on the left.
Yeah. And so, yeah, while you're dealing with that, I absolutely agree. And one thing I would like to add in terms of for y'all to put in your messaging toolbox about this is you can be like, hey, how do you guys feel about Gavin Newsom? How will they respond?
Oh, glad you brought that up. I almost forgot.
Yeah. How will they respond to, do you like Gavin Newsom?
Yeah, they hate Gavin Newsom.
Okay, so bring this up. Who is Gavin Newsom's ex-wife? Gavin Newsom's ex-wife is Kimberly Guilfoyle, who is now Trump. Well, she's gone full Mar-a-Lago face, which is a bizarre anthropological rite of passage that women who want to be high up in the MAGA hierarchy power structure need to go through. It's like ritual scarification, the Mar-a-Lago face. Anyways, she is completely morphed into MAGA, and now she is Trump's ambassador to Greece. Okay, so bear with me one more time. We're putting into Google. Kimberly Guilfoyle gives campaign advice to Gavin Newsom. Yeah, so yeah, and there's a ton of evidence about this. The Times wrote about this. They are still in touch and they're still working on campaign strategy. This is the same ruling class. They all go to the same parties. They know each other. They bark in front of the camera, but they know what's good for them. So
and that's on Gavin Newsom's. On that note, Gavin Newsom is hated across the board here in California. The liberals hate him. The liberals hate Gavin Newsom. I only have two liberal friends. Okay, I keep it to two because I just can't deal with them. I don't know how to talk to them. I can't relate to liberals, but I have two good liberal friends, and both of them are dissatisfied, to say the least, with Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And I was like, that is very encouraging to hear you say that, because to me, Gavin Newsom has always been the liberals' answer to Trump. And despite the fact that he had all these other problems, they were okay with that as long as he was going to be like the opposition to Trump. That's falling.
In what world is he in opposition to Trump?
Well, a few years ago in the liberal world, he was the opposition in their minds. He, of course, never has been. But yeah, and by the way, as far as even the opposition to Gavin Newsom by conservative media, I remember you and I played that Jesse Waters thing where they were talking about how Gavin Newsom was shifting the water to Native American reservations, and that's why we had our problems here in California with fighting the fires.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was really interesting because Gavin Newsom, that's not the problem. The problem is that Gavin Newsom is being lobbied by the Resnick family that owns half of the Southern California water supply. And you notice how conservative media left that part out because they did not want to attack Gavin Newsom on the actual lines that he should have been attacked on. Yeah, Gavin Newsom is a POS because he's lobbied by big corporations, but conservative media didn't want to point that out because they're also embedded with those same corporations. Instead, they're going to shift it to a cultural or identitarian thing by saying he's giving it to the Native Americans. It's like, what? The Native Americans don't own half of California's water supply. It's a Zionist family that owns the freaking pistachio company. Wonderful. So,
right. And also, just as a side note, before you continue, the Resnicks also fund a number of hawkish anti-Iran think tanks in Washington. Why? Well, aside from their Zionists, who is their biggest competitor on the pistachio market? It's Iran. Yeah. So anyways, continue.
So as far as like to give the audience some guidance on how to like manage this, because there's a lot of psyops that are going to be thrown our way. And I want to just there's, of course, the normalization psyop. So the normalization psyop, and again, this is as much of a POS Charlie Kirk is, he actually is not as bad, in my opinion. And this is a hot take. I think that one of the most dangerous psyops is actually Maki-san. I believe that he is actually far more dangerous, and I'll tell you why. I'll explain why.
Would you say Media-san? You kind of
Media-san. Media-san is far more dangerous than Charlie Kirk, and the reason why is because Media-san appears to be on the pro-Palestinian side. However, he's not targeting the core of the problem of why it's happening in Gaza. He takes a liberal approach, and he's normalizing. He's kind of trying to like pull the movement closer to the middle ground of things while still appearing to be extreme. And I want to point out how he did that Jubilee with 20 conservatives, which, by the way, was super problematic because those 20 conservatives were caricatures. They're not real people. They're the fringe of our society. And what it does is it creates this illusion that this is kind of like where we're at in this country. The 20 conservatives you saw on Jubilee, that's like the normal across the board. That's not true. That's not like the majority of MAGA. As cynical as we want to be with MAGA, with these idealistic leftists who are like, MAGA is all SS Nazis and I'll never associate with them. Like, no, dude, like you guys are missing out on opportunities and you're harming class warfare by focusing on the SS division of MAGA, which I call it the SS division. It's the core of the onion. We need to start peeling away the outside layers of MAGA and we will have an army. So this is from Jubilee. And I want to just point out, Hassan spent the first 30 minutes of that debate basically talking about January 6th. And I don't care. This is going to be really offensive to liberals when I say this. I don't care about January 6th at all.
I don't either.
It is funny. In fact, I thought it was actually hilarious. It was not horrifying. It was not an attack on democracy. Because if you think what we have is a democracy in the first place, you're delusional. And what happened on... Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No. And I just want to say this too. I don't care about Jan 6th, but I was in DC during Trump's military parade, and I was walking around doing street interviews with Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. And we were talking afterward about like Jan 6th and stuff. And he totally believes that like he understands why the people there on Jan 6th thought it was like an FBI conspiracy theory. And his position is, they didn't call in the police and a bunch of other, and he sketched out a whole bizarre set of circumstances because he was on the ground at Jan 6th covering it, So Jan 6th is actually not a good talking point.
It's terrible.
It's the worst because
worst.
Jan 6th, obviously it was like insurrectionary, blah, blah, blah. But there was a lot of sketchy stuff happening with the police as well.
Dude, It was the feds led that thing. Like Ray Epps, which was a name that was constantly brought up, was the guy that you saw in videos saying, "Let's storm the Capitol." And literally the crowd started chanting, "He's a Fed, he's a Fed." And they still followed him into the Capitol. I have no idea how that happened, but that was a Fed operation. So Hassan literally spends the first 30 to 45 minutes talking about January 6th and how horrible it was. And I'm just like, hold on. You're telling me that a bunch of angry Americans storming a building full of people that belong in a nursing home who have been pushing policy that has destroyed the lives of millions of people around the world, including our own, that's problematic. That is the issue. That's the threat to democracy. So I'll play this real quick, just a little bit.
I think when you're soft on criminals, when you let criminals out of prison, when you pardon people who've assaulted police officers, you're pro-criminal.
Also, he spent like 30 minutes talking about the most horrifying thing was them assaulting police officers. And
no.
And I'm watching this. I'm just like, oh,
Donald Trump pardoned almost 1,600 people who were involved in January the 6th. I think 600 of them had been charged with assaulting a police officer or obstructing a police officer. 170 had pled guilty to assaulting a police officer. 70 had pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon. J.D. Vance said, we're not going to pardon the violent criminals from January 6th. Donald Trump pardoned all of them. Are you okay with that?
I would say January 6th is a very special case. I would say right now in the LA protests, if they...
Violent ones, though.
Okay. Violent ones like...
Like a man named David Dempsey, a judge, a Reagan-appointed judge, sentenced him to 20 years in prison. He stomped on police officers' heads. The judge said his conduct was exceptionally egregious. He attacked police officers with flagpoles and pepper spray. Donald Trump pardoned him. There's a man named Daniel Rodriguez. He got 12 years in prison for taking a stun gun and tasing a police officer in the neck and giving him a heart.
Don't talk romantically to me like that again.
Yeah.
That's too... So, I mean, really, dude, Hassan, like that's the angle you're taking to go, and it was, and I'm telling you that's far more dangerous than what Charlie Kirk did, and I stand on that hill because it is normalizing. It's normalizing police for one thing. It's framing January 6th as like one of the worst things that happened in human history, and
worse than capitalism, bro.
Bro, it's insane. But yeah,
actually, I want to pick up where you're leaving off here. I actually did, when the Jubilee episode came out, I did an episode on it on Mint Press News. I'm pulling up my show notes from that right now. And what I wrote and for the episode was, quote, while it was cathartic to watch Mehdi Hasan wipe the floor with people, his entire stance is problematic and endemic of the crisis of neoliberalism. I saw one person comment under the video, I watched the entire debate earlier. It's pretty gross clickbait factory, and Mehdi's liberalism is pretty galling. Police good, constitution sacrosanct, couldn't explain why Trump would ethnically cleanse Gaza, U.S. imperialism, capitalism. He's just saying Gaza's being annihilated. And that's it right there, folks. This is why Mehdi Hasan is routinely on Piers Morgan as Piers tries to rehabilitate his image, talking about, you know, that's actually a genocide now. And let's take a look at what Low-Key, everyone loves Low-Key, my colleague at Mint Press and established rapper and journalist, who has debated Piers multiple times on his show. He put this out last week. Hang on, sorry guys, I got to pull it up. I wasn't expecting to play this. Stand by, y'all. Here we go.
Nothing. He's changed nothing. He's trying.
This is about Piers Morgan specifically.
To save his own reputation historically. And because he understood that it's irrefutable what Israel is doing. But he's been a key weapon of Israel throughout this war. Let's be clear. When he asks you if you condemn Hamas, he's trying to do one of two things. Either criminalize you or enlist you into Israeli military propaganda. Those are his two objectives. And so what he's done throughout this period of time, it can't be separated from Murdoch's history. You know, when Mordecai Vanunu was kidnapped by Mossad, it was while he was under the care of Murdoch's newspaper, The Times. Yeah. Murdoch literally had an Israeli intelligence group in this country in the 90s, which hacked his opponent's stuff. Murdoch is described by Benjamin Netanyahu in his book, Bibi, My Story, as one of his closest friends, as Israel has never had a better friend than Rupert Murdoch. So we're supposed to take this person, who is attempting to either criminalize supporters of Palestine or enlist them into Israeli military propaganda as objective and neutral just because he says he is.
Yeah, and here's the problem with Mehdi Hasan, right? Mehdi Hasan, because he is part of the game, the money game, and the notoriety game, gets on Piers Morgan routinely, and through Mehdi's established progressivism, legitimizes and revises Piers' rehabilitation as being not complicit in genocide. And so this is how they all work together. And of course, because the normalization you're talking about coming from Mehdi Hasan, this is why we call it the MIMAC. It's not just the military-industrial complex. The media and the academics are all part of this. And Mehdi Hasan is part of the MIMAC's industrial complex.
You got to think of it like a tree. Like this tree is like this, oligarchy, and they have their agendas. And Mehdi Hasan is a leaf on that tree, but he's that leaf that kind of like tries to seduce people on the left into, compromising their values a little bit to reach out to that. So that's what Mehdi Hasan is. And again, this is all part of the vast array of psyops that we are going to see rolling out. And I think it's good that we are aware of these different psyops. Like, and just to list them, you got normalization psyop, which is what Hasan is, and also what Piers Morgan is. Piers Morgan is the living embodiment of the phrase, a liberal is against every atrocity except the one currently happening. Like he did his job. His job was to normalize what the Israelis were doing. And now that the genocide is just about complete, now he can come out and he manufactured the consent. So he did his job. So now he can do whatever he wants. He can oppose it. He can vehemently oppose it. He can be radical if he wants to, because he already did his job in normalizing it to manufacture consent for the initial stages of the genocide. So what does it matter? What does it matter if Pierce comes out and is against it? It's already past history. It's already in the history books now.
Yeah, and then Mehdi's going to come in and further, save his buddy Piers, because, they're all part of the same political class and they all look out for each other.
100%. So you got the normalization psyop and you got the false opposition psyop that everybody should know and be aware of. That is when we got the boogeyman, and then we got the messiah to the boogeyman. But also you have misguided rage psyop. So the goal is to, and this is where leftists come in actually. So leftists play a critical role in the misguided rage psyop. So now that we're seeing a lot of MAGA become disillusioned and disaffected and disenchanted, the goal here now is for the ruling class to insert leftists who are idealistic to keep us from bringing them into the fold of resistance so that our army remains small. That's the goal of your leftist who will be like, I'm never talking to MAGA. They're all racist. They're all SS. I'm going to stay in my room and go on Instagram and just be. And that is part of.
Yeah. It's like, how about you just shut the fuck up and read more theory? Like that's your problem. You haven't read anything. If that's your perspective.
Yeah. And again, this is where everybody has to come to terms with themselves, and they have to ask themselves, especially people on the left, are you an idealistic leftist or are you a materialist leftist? An idealistic leftist is there to just virtue signal to everybody, hey, I'm on the right side of history. You're more concerned with being right and showing people how angry you are about what's happening than you are with actually doing something about it. A materialist leftist is going to do whatever it takes to create class solidarity. They're going to look at strategy. They're going to infiltrate the people on the right and bring them over. They're going to radicalize MAGA, and they're going to look past their own sensitivities to do that. So that is the biggest problem with American leftists, is that we are so egotistical. We are so concerned about how we feel comfortable and how our sensitivities are, and being right and virtue signaling that we're right, instead of actually doing something to create a class war. So that's part of the misguided rage psyop. Then you have the scandal containment psyop, which is kind of what we started off on with the NYC shooting. That is where you try to contain the scandal, especially and Trump and the whole Epstein thing with Trump. So I'll give you an example of what containment, like the scandal containment psyop is going to look like. It's going to be like this. You're going to first shift focus away to something else. And one of them that they tried to do, which failed miserably, was Tulsi Gabbard saying that we have documents proving that Obama was involved in a conspiracy to push a false narrative about Trump. This is like, guys, I know Epstein's important to you, but this new shit coming out about Obama, way more important, and it's way more scandalous. Check this out.
Walked out to the entire world, slapped her giant brass balls on the table, and explained to everybody that she has Obama and his entire senior staff dead to rights on a criminal conspiracy to create a coup and overthrow the election of 2016. And it's not just, she explains, oh.
So that guy is one of Trump's TikTok hype boys. He's the one that he's a psyop. I'll shoot. I don't even know. I'll give it to you afterwards. But
Okay.
anyways, I've seen that guy come up before. He always puts out these hyped videos with rock and roll music in the background, saying like Trump is playing chess. He just renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Aren't you excited about it? And now with the Epstein thing, he has to distract his base by saying like, "Hey, we're coming out with some crazy documents about Obama forming a coup against Trump. Forget about the Epstein stuff. It's Obama." It's like, dude, and we see this shit happening. We see this. So that's what you call the scandal containment psyop. And then you have manufactured hope. Now, this is also where leftists come into play. And this is where leftists tend to fall into this trap unknowingly. They're not necessarily doing this intentionally. It's where you have some situation that might seem hopeful, that we're like when Trump was using like strong language against Israel. A lot of leftists were like, "Oh yeah, Trump's gonna stick it to Israel." It's a false hope, and it's used in a lot of different ways. So, and that is also used in the political arena. So, let's say we have a candidate out there who appears to be very progressive, and he's saying, "Guys, things are about to change during the midterms. You vote for me, things are going to change around. We're going to swap everything. We're waging full out war against the ruling class if you go out and vote." And so what you're doing is you're taking that rage that's building up within the left and the right about a revolution, and you focus that in on just an election. That's it. Not building a local community, not building a resistance network, not actually talking about the idea of a physical revolution. No, it's all going to be in the electoral sphere. So that's manufactured hope. And then you have, of course, what everybody's dealing with, including myself, is the cognitive overload psyop. This is where you're overloading the public with so much dismal news and just being bombarded with one atrocity after another, one completely unhinged policy being passed after another, where we are getting flooded by it. And
it's like it's literally information warfare blitzkrieg. That's how I see it. It's a blitzkrieg.
Yep. Exactly. Now,
lightning war.
Now, here's my advice on how to handle that. As with everything bombarding, keep it simple and stay focused. Form an alliance, form an army in this country amongst the working class so that we can get ready for an actual revolution. And
if enough people get on board quick enough, it can be somewhat velvet.
Yes. And this is going to involve physical stuff, building physical community. I've said this before, I am working on a plan with the Black Panther Party about rolling out an actual roadmap for a revolution. And it's shaping up, and we're going to have a whole episode on that at some point. And so that's how you can handle this blitzkrieg. Keep it simple. Like keep things simple. Like, we know what the goal here is. Don't get distracted from the goal. Yes, you have a lot of stuff going on. You have a lot of new challenges facing us that's being piled on top of each other, but understand that the goal remains simple. And if you keep that messaging simple to the right wing, and you can and that's the thing about the right wing, is that when you can, dumb down and compress knowledge, like the vast knowledge that's in, Karl Marx or, class consciousness, use simple terminology, because simple terminology is what got them there with MAGA. Trump used 5th grade level language and it worked. So what does that tell you? Like, what does that tell you about what we should be doing? Compress it to simple language. Stop being so snobby. Nobody cares that you know what dialectical materialism means. Nobody gives a shit. You're not in school. You're not going to have the professor grade your paper. Nobody cares how much knowledge you have unless you can actually compress that knowledge to the streets. Like, basically, you need to pull a Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton got frustrated. Huey P. Newton got frustrated with the African Association studies. I forgot what it was called. It was basically just a group full of leftists who were about, Black nationalism and liberation. And they had a lot of great knowledge. They had a lot of good takes, but they weren't reaching the streets. So Huey P. Newton got frustrated and formed the Black Panther Party because he spoke to the streets. He knew that he had to translate everything that we're learning about capitalism and Marxism and communism and socialism and whatever, and constitutionalism. You have to compress that shit down to something that the working class can actually feed on and keep it stupid simple. And that's the worst part for leftists, because leftists they take pride in their knowledge. They take pride in the fact that they have
Well,
such.
yeah, it took a lot of work to attain it, but
It did.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. We need to become, I think we're both like militant leftists. And guess what? In the military, you keep shit dumbed the fuck down so everybody has a baseline with which to work off of. All right. So, yes, of course, we need people in the intelligence section. You got your theory. Fine. We need you there. We don't need you, like, I don't know, in the recruiting office, please. Or you can just learn how to moderate your speech and code switch, which I think everyone should be able to do. But there's a reason why, military organizations have a standard doctrine. It's all simple language that everyone can understand.
Yeah.
Everyone can understand it.
Because if your goal is to get every American to get a PhD in, dialectical materialism, it ain't going to happen. Like, we don't have time. Like, we're racing against the clock. You're going to have to speed it up. You're going to have to create a streamlined approach to it. And you got to stop being so judgmental. Like, I'm not saying like to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation with people who are extremely problematic. I'm not preaching to the people who are part of vulnerable groups. Like, if you're in a vulnerable group and you feel like you're not safe around MAGA, that's fine. I'm not speaking to those people. I'm speaking to the people that can afford it. They can afford emotionally to do it. And there's plenty of us out there, So,
like, I think that's one of our purposes, with this podcast, with our activism as white dudes with military backgrounds. Like, I'm going on to a series of constitutionalist podcasts, which you could describe as the anti-authoritarian, right? That's what I will describe them as. Of course, we'll keep into leftist circles. You're not anti-authoritarian if you're not anti-capitalist, because capitalism always ends in forms of coercion. Anyways.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be doing that talking. Be like, you're on the anti-authoritarian left. You believe in the Constitution as the one thing that defends us from like private interests and tyrants and etc. Even though they have problematic ideas about, because they don't understand our economic system, they're blaming, Israel on the Jews and what's happening on the Jews. And it's my job to slowly, over time, using historical examples, simple, easily apprehendable anecdotes, to start to widen the conversation beyond the APAC to, okay, but even if Israel doesn't exist, that doesn't explain our policy in Taiwan. It doesn't explain our policy in Ukraine. It doesn't explain AFRICOM's new strategic positioning to dominate the Sahel nations. It doesn't really work in that model. And also, APAC, as we brought up at the beginning of this episode, is small. It's a small lobbying group. You know what's a big one? The biggest, the real estate lobby. Let's actually talk about that. And we're not going to get into like the abolition of private property or the difference between commerce and cap. No, we're just going to keep it simple.
Yes.
And that's because that's literally all they need.
It's literally all they need. And honestly, like, the language that leftists use, it's off-putting. Like, for example, the abolition of private property. People on the right get so disenchanted with that term because we're using it wrong. the abolition of private property does not mean your house or your farm or your small business. It means the abolition of the elite's property, the corporate property, starting off. And by the way, if we confiscate the elite's property, we'll be good for another 150 years. We can literally sustain. We don't have to take anybody else's property. We're literally only talking about corporate property starting off. Like this idea that like we have to push the core purist version of it. No, you don't have to. You start with the most obvious, which is the fact that BlackRock and Blackstone have bought up like
all
the
shit.
majority, everything. We're just
Yeah.
taking it. And by the way, we're just taking back what belongs to us in the first place. That shit was stolen from us.
Yeah. What's the biggest crime in America? What's the biggest crime in America?
White collar crime.
Yeah. AKA wage theft.
Wage theft, like and like all the different loopholes that they're able to use to steal from the American people. Use that. And by the way, use patriotic language. It's very effective. And I know it makes you cringe when you use patriotic language, but again, you have to ask yourself, go back, are you a materialist or are you an idealistic person? Because if you're a materialist, you'll use whatever language out there to get the goal done. And so stop being so snobby. Like that's the biggest part about leftists is snobby.
And you are going to deal with people with a lot of problematic ideas. Racist ideas, bigoted ideas, misogynistic ideas. But you know what dispels that is class consciousness, inevitably.
Yeah. And once you find that common ground with them and they start liking what they're hearing, guess what? They're going to be curious about what else you have to say, including anti-racial stuff, anti-misogynistic stuff. They will want to be part of your tribe. And they're going to want to change so that they can have that support structure. It's the best thing. Like the best way of protesting, I keep telling people this, honestly, is not getting out in the streets and protesting with signs. It's literally going and giving somebody something and saying, hey, I'm going to give you this food, this money, because I know you're struggling. And then suddenly they're going to care about what you have to say. It's the best form of protest. And that's what the Black Panthers figured out. And by the way, I'm going to take this opportunity to push a little recruitment. If you are interested in joining the Black Panthers and you're watching this, we're going to put the link to their website in the description. I highly suggest that you reach out to them because they're all about this stuff. They're all about the real deal of actually, like pushing a revolution, an actual one. So we'll put that link in the description. But yeah, man.
God, hang on one sec.
You do your thing. I'm gonna play this. Speaking of,
I got a cat behind the computer. Hang on. Everybody's been wondering. Sorry, just to take a quick intermission.
Yeah. Take an intermission.
This is Louis.
Oh.
We got him 3 days ago, and he's a sweet boy, and he always messes with me when I'm trying to record. So,
dude, black cats are always like the cutest. They got those little eyes that poke out.
Yeah, no. We went down to San Antonio, and there's a large Catholic population, so black cats don't do well down there because of superstition. So he had, dude, it's a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah,
I knew it was just that's crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry, continue.
So I don't know. So I go on Joe Rogan to listen to what is being said, and he had this it's his CIA handler. This is the guy that
is this the Mike Baker interview?
Mike Baker. So Mike,
dude, I talked about this. This is insane, y'all.
So Mike Baker, if you want to know, he was former CIA, and his job is to go on Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan has the largest platform on the planet to push, the latest, messaging that they want us to buy into. When he was on Joe Rogan, I believe like a few months ago, he was trying to push the idea that Iran is a huge threat, of course, pushing Iran and China. And of course, nobody's buying it anymore.
Didn't he make the rounds on Sean Ryan's show as well, pushing the same stuff?
Probably. Oh yeah, of course. I'm sure he's on Sean Ryan. It's all a club. So he did an interesting angle here on the Epstein thing to try and I guess discourage us from going down the rabbit hole of Epstein. So here's another psyop. The other psyop is bureaucratic complexities. It's So it's kind of like this. It's like, look, we'll never know what happened with Epstein. It's going to be bureaucratic. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, and maybe a few years from now they'll say they released documents.
What can you do?
What can you do? And he pulled that. I'm like, this is interesting because this is very effective actually to certain people.
I will say truth gets in the way. I will say that the Epstein situation is going to be so disappointing to so many people now because I have this theory that nothing ever gets done in Washington, D.C., right? Investigations go to die there. Nothing ever happens. There's never any real consequences of any nature. And we got all sorts of things happening right now, right? So the Epstein case is just one of them. But right now you've got the Dems focused on Epstein because, they see there's just a good opportunity here to go after Trump, regardless of who else is in the files, right? And the Dems, I think, were worried for quite some time and didn't pursue it because, years back they were thinking, okay, Clinton's going to be embarrassed. We don't want that. Right. So, again, my point would be just release everything. I don't understand how, if you just look at the way that they handled this logistically, whoever thought, because the mob wants to eat, right? And they've been throwing red meat to the mob about Epstein files now for years. It's part of how they got elected. Right. And so whoever in their communications group or in their strategic thinking arena in the administration thought, that we can get away with just saying there's nothing to see here, they should be fired, right? Because there's no way you can satisfy this mob.
So he's more concerned about, it appears that the sentiments here is, they're more concerned about just satisfying the mob. It's like, dude, just fire the people who have mishandled this. Not the fact that the people who control our essential planet with all the resources, with all the policy making, they're all involved in child trafficking. They're evil. They're not fit to lead humanity, and they should be overthrown in a very violent and physical way. So that's the takeaway that I get. And apparently the takeaway that they're getting is we just need to fire the people who mishandle this.
Well, that was not the only thing he said in that interview. He also said there may be a foreign intelligence connection to Epstein, but it's likely Russia or China.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
But here's kind of what I wanted to end on, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the entire premise of why I wanted to do this episode, it's like they're so desperate. And these narratives are literally unraveling. They're collapsing under their own contradictions, just like capitalism does. It's bizarre to watch in real time, and I feel like maybe people on the right understand this, but they're unable to source it properly. They just need to be redirected.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%. So,
and I just wanted to bring this up, this one last piece to bring to your attention for my last little demonstration here. Stand by. Project 2025 author Paul Dans is to challenge Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina for the Senate race. Stand by for my point.
Senator Lindsey Graham now has a new challenger for his seat. Paul Dans, who's a chief architect of Project 2025, is set to formally announce his campaign at an event on Wednesday here in Charleston. Dans reportedly told the Associated Press that the Trump administration's federal workforce reductions and cuts to federal programs are what he had hoped for in drafting Project 2025. He says that there's more work to do, particularly in the Senate. Project 2025 is a political initiative to reshape the federal government here in the United States. Dans joins a very crowded field ahead of next year's midterm election here in the Palmetto State. Graham has held that seat, though, since 2003, rather.
The reason I bring this up, and this is something that you could bring up or at least discuss with Trump loyalists or MAGA loyalists, what we're seeing is literally the fascists used Trump as a vessel for their long game agenda. They are now trying to purge the old guard to do a full takeover. The Lindsey Grahams, the people like that, Vance, Peter Thiel, the Kreischow fascists, the Project 2025 freaks. So Steve Bannon can be like, we need a third term for President Trump, but that's not really what's going to happen. Even if Trump is opposed, they're trying to consolidate power before he loses his cult of personality.
Which is why JD Vance is appearing to have the more digestible takes lately. Because and the same with Newsom. Newsom is trying to groom himself to be the next alternative to Trump. It's not working. This guy went on Sean Ryan for Sean Ryan. That's what Newsom did to cultivate his image amongst people, you know, who are having second thoughts about Trump and think that might. So they're going to create alternatives for Trump, guys, and a lot of people are going to be very thankful for these alternatives because they think that it's actually an alternative.
But they're not really alternatives.
They're not. It's false opposition, and everybody should be aware. So, and the only way, and I know a lot of the audience knows this already, like most of what we talked about today, they know this, but what the audience doesn't seem to get is that in order for this knowledge to be effective, you're going to have to talk to people that you may not want to talk to. Like for me, I have a problem talking to liberals. I can't do it. It's really hard for me. I'm trying to challenge myself.
But we also have to hold space for the fact, or at least for me, I grew up on the liberal coastal elite demographic. I used to be one. So, hey, they're not all unsavable.
True. And you know what, guys, to show that I'm going to practice what I'm preaching, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on myself and talking to liberals. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to have conversations just to say that I did it. And then I want you guys to do the same for the people on the right.
Yeah. And basically a good inroad is to use Zohran Mamdani as a touchstone. This is one of the reasons some politicians are still relevant, because even if they won't enact any policies, they are demonstrative that there is a will for change amongst people. And you can be like, hey, did you see how all the billionaires and the corporate interests and the establishment Democrats hate him? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
So that's where we begin. Anything else you want to touch on? Because I am out of time and got to move on to something else.
Yeah, I gotta head to work. Yeah, well, don't forget, we're putting the link to the Black Panther Party down below in case you guys are interested. I'm gonna be pushing that more, just giving you a heads up on that, so don't get annoyed with me.
Text me that so I can put it in the description.
And I'll leave this out. And one last question to everybody: are you an idealist or a materialist? You have to ask yourself that question. And if you're an idealist, change that shit to being a materialist.
Yeah. Just be a materialist with ideals. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, guys.
You're good compromise.
All right. No, we don't compromise. All right. Anyways, hope this was helpful. If you listened to the end, thank you very much. And if you could give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we're trying to reach a certain number of views so we can get shunted into a new algorithm. So thanks for if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. But we're just glad you're here, and
Absolutely.
we will see you Friday?
I guess.
See you Friday. Yeah, for our Patreon episode. All right.
Absolutely.
Cheers, y'all, and you have a great day.
All right. Peace, fam.